Good morning, Napa Valley Unitarian Universalists, and welcome to our weekly online worship service brought to you by the COVID-19 pandemic. I'm Reverend Dr. Leisa Huyck, and I am the parish minister here. And with me today as your celebrant is Maggie Ingalls, and David Lindsay will be our special guest. We gather in the presence of all that is most holy. The wide sky, the warm sun, the slow-moving river, the gold and green hills, the love that moves in and among us. We gather in search of meaning and inspiration, in search of hope and healing. We gather to share our joys and our sorrows and to mark the passing of our years. All through the month of June, we're gathering to ponder the question, what does it mean to be a people of compassion? One of the 6 sources of our Unitarian Universalist faith is words and deeds of prophetic women and men which challenge us to confront structures of evil with justice, compassion, and the transforming power of love. How is that even possible? Especially in times like these when many people are so overwhelmed by anxiety and fear and change that we can barely function. Today, we'll look at the role communication can play in bringing more compassion into every sphere of human life, from the very personal to the global. No one is born with perfect communication skills, but we can learn to do better. Come, let us bring our whole selves to this time together, and let us worship. Now is the time to center ourselves through music.
Every Sunday, we join Unitarian Universalists all over the world in lighting a chalice, the symbol of our faith. You are invited now to light your own chalice or a candle in a bowl as I speak these words from Sarah Eileen Lawal. Out of the flames of fear, we rise with the courage of our deepest convictions to stand for justice, inclusion, and peace. Out of the flames of scrutiny, we rise to proclaim our faith with hope to heal a fractured and hurting world. Out of the flames of doubt, we rise to embrace the mystery, wonder, and awe of all there is and all that is yet to be. Out of the flames of hate, we rise with the force of love, love that celebrates our shared humanity. Out of the flames we rise. Now, instead of a hymn, we have a little musical treat for you. Now I invite you to pause for a moment and feel the beating of your heart. What is your heart carrying today? What milestones have you passed, and what are your feelings about them? Joy, sorrow, fear, anger, confusion? Now is the time in our service when we share joys and sorrows. We make sacred the milestones in our lives when we share them in community. We have here a bowl of water and some stones. Reverend Leisa will place a stone in the bowl for each joy or sorrow shared on the chat. If you have something in your heart that you do not wish to share, just type stone into the chat, and Reverend Leisa will place a stone for you too.
I place a stone into this bowl for the life and brutal death of George Floyd. Let us say his name, George Floyd. I place another stone for the beautiful life and brutal death of Breonna Taylor. Let us say her name, Breonna Taylor. I place a third stone for the beautiful life and brutal death of Ahmaud Arbery. Let us say his name, Ahmaud Arbery. I place a fourth stone in the bowl for the more than 113,000 beautiful lives unnecessarily lost in the United States to COVID-19. Finally, I place a stone in the bowl for all those joys and sorrows that remain in the silence of our hearts because they're too tender to share. I invite you now to join me in a time of quiet reflection. Get comfortable in your seat or lying on the floor. Feel how the earth supports you. Whether you're standing up or sitting down or lying down, the earth cradles you safely in every moment you're alive. Receive a breath in through your nose and out through your mouth. Receive a second breath, feeling the oxygen enter your lungs to recharge your bloodstream, and release it, letting the carbon dioxide go. Receive a third breath in and then out. And know you are alive. Now Hear these words from our great teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh. Let us be at peace with our bodies and our minds. Let us return to ourselves and become wholly ourselves. Let us be aware of the source of being, common to us all and to all living things. Evoking the presence of the great compassion, let us fill our hearts with our own compassion towards ourselves and towards all living beings. Let us pray that we ourselves cease to be the cause of suffering to each other. With humility, with awareness of the existence of life and of the sufferings that are going on around us, let us practice the establishment of peace in our hearts and on earth. Amen. Blessed be. Let us now enter a time of silence. The music will bring us out.
May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be well. May I be filled with loving kindness. May I be May I be peaceful and at ease. May I be whole. May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be May you be filled with loving kindness. May you be well. May you be peaceful and at ease. May you be whole. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be filled with loving kindness. May we be well. May we be peaceful and at ease. May we be
We have a reading for you this morning from systems thinker and poet Margaret Wheatley. In places where air still offers clarity, stars sing a siren song from space in the bright night. Lying on soft earth, carried into sky by longing, humans respond to stars with questions. Why is the universe so vast? Why are we so small? Call and response through the night. My whole life I have sent these questions into space and listened for response. Then sky wakens and star songs fade. Humans forget mystery and go on living. But the stars keep calling. No response. Why is it that we call to stars with science and insignificance? On the next bright night, find the clear air and ask again. Humans, ask again. Who are we? What is our place in mystery? Perhaps you will hear what I have heard, a song of inner radiance. For the stars are calling, saying we must turn to one another, turn to one another and see, finally see, stars everywhere.
Have you ever gotten into an argument with someone you love about housework? How long were you upset before it all blew up? Did you try to overlook things but then go around in a constant state of irritation? Or maybe you both bottled unhappy feelings up for months and then suddenly exploded and brought up everything either of you ever did wrong and accused each other of being terrible people. Or maybe you just complained to your friends about the situation while never actually talking to the person you were really upset with. That's called triangulation, by the way, when two people get together to talk about a problem they have with someone else, but don't speak directly to the person they have a problem with. This happens a lot in churches. In fact, it happens a lot in this church. None of these ways of dealing with the situation feel very good, do they? And none of them are particularly effective either. It would be a lot better if we could talk directly to the person involved about little things as they come up. But for many of us, that is really hard. We're conflict avoiders, and we just don't want to go there. Why do we avoid conflict so? Well, many of us grew up in families where it was not safe to express our own truth. If we disagreed with our parents, we were severely punished. And our families reflected the larger culture. It is a dangerous proposition to disagree with the way things are. We're taught that in order to remain safe, we must go along with the flow and be nice to others. Nice meaning superficially polite, while underneath harboring all sorts of different feelings. We're taught to comply, even if we know in our bones that something is wrong. We risk grievous harm if we don't, and we are definitely seeing that in these last couple of weeks. Alternatively, and at the very same time, we're taught that success in life depends on winning at competition, and the way to win is to totally dominate. Send the opponent packing with tail between legs like those dueling kitties we saw earlier. Remember the fights we had with siblings or playmates as kids? How winning meant humiliating the other person, making them cry so they didn't want to play with us anymore? We don't have to look very far to see people who are supposed to be adults and leaders of our nation behaving in this way every day. So we get these conflicting messages. On the one hand, it's important to never rock the boat. And on the other, if we do, we have to either win at all costs or be totally destroyed. No wonder we avoid conflict. It's terrifying under those conditions. But what if we saw conflict in a different way? What if instead of seeing it as something that endangers us, we saw it as the natural expression of diversity in healthy systems? What if we understood conflict as the means by which systems adjust to change? See, this is how living systems work. Change happens all the time, and systems need to adjust. Your body, for example, is made of organs and circulatory systems, which are made of cells. Each cell has its own needs and its own job. If a need doesn't get met, the cell can't do its job. It sends out messages to the other parts of the system, and the whole system gets sick until the need is met again. So if our cells aren't getting enough water, for example, they send out little distress signals that are picked up by our brain, and our brain tells us to drink water. These little messages are feedback. If we respond to the feedback and drink water, our cells get better, and they stop sending out signals. If we suppress feedback and don't drink water, We can get very sick or even die. The system collapses. The tricky thing is that our needs for water change constantly depending on how hot or cold we are, how active we are, what size we are, and so on. But our bodies are so finely tuned that unless we're sick, our cells tell us just how much water we need to drink. This is how all living systems work, from the tiniest microorganism to the whole planetary ecosystem. Feedback is how the system adjusts and adapts to change, which happens all the time. Now, human beings live in interdependent systems with one another and with other forms of life. And human beings, like all organisms, have needs, and our needs change, and different people have different needs. In order for our systems to be healthy, we have to be able to express our needs so we can get them met. And we have to respond to each other's needs in ways that keep the system healthy. We need to have ways to give each other feedback. And at the beginning, that's all conflict is, feedback. It's people expressing wants and needs that are different from one another's. We can handle the feedback by making adjustments to keep the system working, which would be the healthy thing to do, or we can suppress the feedback. Suppressing feedback is what happens when people respond violently to other people's needs, as tyrants and dictatorships do, and bullies. It's also what happens when we do not express our own needs directly. It's what happens when we triangulate with each other instead of directly addressing the person with whom we have a difference. And just like if we don't drink the water we need, these ways of suppressing feedback can cause the whole system to collapse. So how can we express and respond to needs in ways that bring about wholeness and beauty rather than violence and collapse? What a question. What a question. This is really the central religious question. How do we live together with all beings in love and peace as we are called to do? Sacred texts and oral traditions of all religions give us deceptively simple advice. Replace fear with love. Replace hatred with compassion. But these are not actually that simple, so religious traditions teach spiritual practices that help us over the course of a lifetime, or perhaps many lifetimes, to achieve these goals. They teach us to practice generosity, to meditate, contemplate sacred texts, pray, practice mindfulness, make music, worship, walk outdoors. And anyone who does these things knows that they do help, but often we still can't seem to tell each other that we're upset about the housework. Perhaps this is because historically many Eastern and Western spiritual paths involved withdrawing from family and civic life in order to practice. The idea was that only by leaving the ordinary world with its ordinary attachments could religious seekers attain enlightenment or union with the divine. But I believe that ordinary life is spiritual practice. I believe that it is in ordinary life that we can best learn how to live in love and peace. And so I offer you now some practices that can only be used in relationship with others. They are communication practices that can help conflict avoiders communicate directly with others about their needs. One of these practices, developed by Marshall Rosenberg, is called nonviolent communication, and I know that a small group of you have been practicing this together for some time. Another practice was developed by Dennis Adams in an excellent tiny little book called honest, direct, respectful. And a third was developed by Sharon Ellison, and it's called powerful, non-defensive communication. There are other variations with other names, but most boil down to very similar practices. Here's how they can work in a marriage. Let's return to the housework argument. Two spouses begin in a state of anger, but then they turn to one another in love. They tell one another their stories, but they do this in a particular way. And before I tell you what that is, I want to make a little footnote. I want to avoid gender stereotyping and heterosexism here, so I'm going to use plural pronouns to describe the process, okay? So here's the way the partners tell their stories. Let's say partner one is unhappy about something. They begin by describing the physical events they have observed. Start with observation. Then they describe their thoughts about the events, their interpretation. So observe, then interpret. Next, they tell what their feelings are about that interpretation. So that's observe, interpret, evaluate. Tell what your feelings are. Then express your needs. Finally, they make a request for change and ask the other person if they're willing to grant that request. At each stage, partner two reflects back to partner one what they're hearing. Partner two then tells their own story in the same way, and partner one reflects back what they hear. Then the two brainstorm together about how to meet both their needs. Let's listen in to see how it works.
You know, lately, I've noticed that even though we both work full time, I have been doing 3 or 4 hours of housework a day, and you do about 20 minutes worth.
You've been seeing me do about 20 minutes worth of housework while you do 4 hours a day?
Yes, and when that happens, I think you must not think of me as an equal partner. I think you must not consider me as important as you are. I think you must not love me in the way I want to be loved.
So when I do less housework than you think this means I don't love you in the way that you want to be loved. You think I don't believe you are equal to me.
Yes, and I feel very frustrated and angry and sad about this.
I see. You're feeling frustrated and angry and sad.
Yes, I need to know that you love me and value me as an equal partner. I need to believe that you think of me as being just as important as you are in our relationship.
Oh, I'm so sorry. I do think you're just as important as I am. I want you to know that I love you very much, and I do value you as an equal partner. What can I do so you'll understand that?
Well, I'd really like it if we could divide the housework more equally. Would you be willing to work with me on coming up with a better way to do it?
Yes, I would. And I also have something I need to say here. You know, my work is really physically demanding. You've helped me with it sometimes. You know how hard it is. When I come home, I'm so exhausted I can hardly move. I need to rest, and I need to feel respected for how hard I work. I don't really care as much as you do about keeping the house clean. So for me, it would be okay if we just did less housework altogether. I would rather spend more time doing fun things together and less time worrying about the house.
Well, I do know you're a party animal.
That isn't...
So you are so exhausted at the end of each day that it's hard for you to do any more when you come home.
Yes.
And you need to rest and for me to respect how hard you work.
Yes.
And you think it would be okay for the house to be less clean in general?
Mm-hmm.
And you'd like to spend less time on that and more time doing fun things?
Yes.
Well, I really do respect how hard you work. I admire you so much, and it's nice to know you want to have more fun together. But I need you to respect how hard I work too.
You need me to respect how hard you work too?
Yes.
Well, I can understand that. I see what you mean. I do respect your work. I want you to know that.
Thank you. So I really do like the idea of having more time for fun. But there's some really basic cleaning that we need to do regularly for hygiene. And we can't stop taking care of the pets or kids. So my request is that we share at least the most important chores.
Okay. What if we put the most important things at the top of a list and we divide them up? And I'll do more of my cleaning chores on the weekends and less after work. And then what if we do the less important things less regularly so we still have time to have fun together?
We could try that.
So now they're brainstorming. And once they finish that, they'll agree on a plan for the future. Did that conversation sound a little stilted? Maybe a little contrived? That's because it is a conversation between total beginners at this way of communicating. It's an actual conversation that my husband and I had in a counseling session. I had been upset for many months over the housework. I had already bottled up my feelings for a while and generally been angry and irritable. And I didn't like being that person. I had already exploded in an unloving way, and I didn't like that either. I had already triangulated with my girlfriends, but none of these things helped. They had just put distance between me and my husband where we wanted intimacy. So finally, we went to counseling and we learned this method of communicating, and it still works for us. But I have to say, I was a little embarrassed because I had been using this approach for years in environmental conflict resolution, but hadn't thought to apply it to our marriage. I had seen it help loggers and environmentalists agree on how to manage forest watersheds. I had seen it help farmers and indigenous tribes agree on how to manage a river for both irrigation and salmon. A version of it was used after apartheid ended in South Africa as part of the truth and reconciliation process. It has been used in successful mediations between Palestinians and Israelis. This way of approaching conflict works because it involves, as Margaret Wheatley puts it, turning to one another. People gather in circles, even circles of two. They agree on ground rules or make a covenant to create a safe space, and then they do deep listening. They tell their stories to one another and express their needs. They reflect back to each other what they've heard. Once people feel truly heard, everything changes. The possibility of healing enters in. One young black man in South Africa who had been blinded by a white person, said that just telling his story and having it heard made him feel like he had gotten his eyesight back. When this kind of healing takes place, enormous creativity gets unleashed. People can work together to find ways of meeting everyone's needs. Instead of fearing conflict, we can now begin to see it as a dance. It becomes an opportunity to truly get to know one another and to create beauty we have never before seen. Back and forth we move together, expressing our truest selves, learning to trust in the relationship that holds us. This is healthy feedback. This brings compassion and wholeness and real love into our shared lives. It is deep spiritual practice, and it is just what this world needs most at this moment in time. You might think, well, duh, of course it is, but the most problematic and violent people are not interested in turning to one another in love, and that's the whole problem. But really, it isn't the problem. The problem is that people confuse the strategies we use to meet our needs with the needs themselves. People don't need to scream viciously at others or to bully. They need to feel respected or to feel safe. And often they're using anger or bullying as a strategy because this is the only way they know how to get those needs met. The most problematic and violent people are often the people who are most afraid and sad and lonely. People who are true experts in compassionate communication can talk to the most angry, violent people in the midst of their angriest, most violent behavior and calm them down. By guessing what they're feeling and what their real needs are and reflecting that back to them, the nonviolent communicator can show anyone they've been truly heard. And again, being heard changes everything. I have seen compassionate communication help white supremacists heal and become friends and allies of Black and brown people. And I've seen it help homophobic people heal and become allies of LGBTQ people. Compassionate communication truly is powerful magic. How might your life and relationships be enriched by these communication skills? How might the life of this congregation be enriched? How much more impact in our community could we have if we were a center of this kind of compassionate practice? Shall we find out? If you would like to know more, we can begin with some introductory sessions in the fall. And from there, we can see how far we want to go. In the meantime, you can start now. You can turn to one another and to me in love and speak from your heart. May it be so. Blessed be.
Love is the spirit of this church and service its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another. This congregation depends entirely upon the generosity of its members and friends. All that we give in time, talent, and treasure is what sustains this community and makes it not just a sanctuary for us to return to for spiritual nourishment, but an oasis from which we can go out into the world carrying the waters of life. With today's offering, let us practice generosity. I invite you to think about the amount you are planning to give today and double it. You can go to the church website at NVUU.org and click on the donate button to the lower left, or mail us a check at NVUU 1625 Salvador Avenue, Napa, California 94558. The offering will now be gratefully received.
Thank you for your many gifts of time, talent, and treasure. All you give and all you do is vitally important in building the beloved community in this region. Now, today is the last day I'll be leading worship in this church year, which is the fiscal year. The new church year begins in July, and children's religious exploration will continue through the summer, and adult religious exploration will start back up again in September. So I need to thank a very large number of people for all they've done this year. So we'll do that on Zoom at the beginning of our social time together. Please join us so we can properly thank everyone who has worked so hard to keep us going in this difficult time. If anyone has any invitations into community, we'll do those on Zoom as well. Our closing words this morning come from Starhawk. Earth Mother, Star Mother, you who are called by 1,000 names, may all remember we are cells in your body and dance together. You are the grain and the loaf that sustains us each day. And as you are patient with our struggles to learn, so shall we be patient with ourselves and each other. We are radiant light and sacred dark, the balance. You are the embrace that heartens and the freedom beyond fear. Within you we are born, we grow, live, and die. You bring us around the circle to rebirth. Within us you dance forever. Now let us join in singing our closing song, Let It Be a Dance We Do.
Let
We extinguish this chalice, but not the light of truth, the warmth of love, or the fire of commitment. These we carry in our hearts out into the world until we meet again. Now, people of this beloved community, may you turn to one another and see stars everywhere. Go shining. Blessed be.